Gray Penner was about 120 pages into his latest Clive Cussler novel when he finally heard his wife's car pull into the garage. He tapped his Fitbit and saw it was 8:17 p.m. He frowned. This was the third night that week Kelly had arrived home late. Until 4 months earlier, she had never come home late once in the 7 years of their marriage. Gray wasn't naive. At first, when Kelly called to say she'd be delayed, he didn't think much of it. Then one evening, when she arrived later than usual, he noticed her lipstick was slightly smudged, unusual for someone as meticulous about her appearance as Kelly. He was also fairly certain he caught the scent of another man's aftershave when she leaned in to kiss him. That night, while lying in bed, he deliberately nuzzled her neck as he spooned her from behind. He didn't know much about cologne, but he knew there was a clear difference between the white shoulders he bought her and whatever scent he detected. Gray nearly gasped when his auburn-haired wife walked through the door. At 30, she was just as striking as the first time he'd seen her in college, and his reaction was always the same whenever he saw her after hours apart. Kelly noticed his familiar response and smiled to herself. She knew it was sincere, and she admitted she found it exciting that her husband still desired her so strongly, especially so soon after she'd been close to another man. "Hey, sweetie," she said as she walked over, gave him a brief kiss, and turned toward the stairs, her unseen smile confident and faintly dismissive. "I just need to get comfortable. I'll be down in a minute." Gray said nothing as she passed him and headed upstairs. She didn't seem to notice his silence. He did notice, once again, the lingering aftershave. As she climbed the stairs, he furrowed his brow, dreading the confrontation he knew was coming if his marriage was going to survive. At this point, Gray didn't believe Kelly had completely crossed the line with what he privately referred to as the Prince of Paco Rabanne, but he was convinced she was getting closer. For years, Gray had feared that his beautiful wife might one day decide she had married beneath her in looks and try to correct that mistake. He didn't think of himself as unattractive, but his average appearance didn't compare to hers. The man who entered their marriage like a serpent in the garden was Johann Wegman. Kelly worked as an assistant vice president at an international telecommunications company. Johann was a fit, 40-year-old blonde vice president who had transferred from the company's Netherlands headquarters about 6 months earlier. For the first couple of weeks, Gray heard far more about the Dutch executive than he wanted to. Then, Kelly abruptly stopped mentioning him altogether, which only deepened Gray's suspicions. One evening at dinner, Gray asked, "That new Dutch guy still working in your office?" "Yeah, why?" Kelly replied, sounding slightly confused. "For a while, he was all you talked about. Now it's like he vanished," Gray said. "He's in another department." "We don't really see each other," she answered, her face flushing noticeably. "Huh?" Gray muttered, taking another bite and recognizing the lie immediately. Soon after, the late nights began. Kelly had been physically drawn to the 6'4", 225-pound Dutchman from the moment they met. Beyond his build, Johann projected strong confidence that bordered on arrogance. He spoke 3 languages, and his deep blue eyes seemed, to Kelly, to look straight through her. If she was honest, she felt something the first time he smiled at her. In reality, Kelly and Johann didn't work in separate departments at all and interacted frequently. Within weeks, they were going to lunch alone together. Kelly still loved her husband and didn't initially reflect on what was becoming a growing attachment to Johann. Johann, however, was fully aware that the relationship was deepening because he was carefully guiding it there. He knew Kelly was married, but assumed she would stop him if he went too far. In his culture, affairs were not taboo. 2 weeks later, they were working on a project that wouldn't quite be finished by the end of the day. Johann suggested they either continue in the morning or stay late and wrap it up. Her smile answered him. She called Gray to say she'd be a couple of hours late, the first time she'd ever done so in her career. Gray, who sometimes worked late himself, didn't object and offered to handle dinner. She praised him for being thoughtful. They left the office at 7, despite finishing their work around 5:30. Both were aware of the time. Staying late soon became routine. At first, they talked. Then it progressed to touching, holding, and kissing. Kelly knew she was standing on the edge of something dangerous, but she enjoyed having both a husband and a lover. She was so absorbed in her own emotions that she failed to notice, or didn't care, that Gray had become aware. After college, Gray secured a solid job with good pay at a small local telecom firm. Kelly, with the same degree, started in a lower role at an international company. They agreed to remain childless until 30 and decided Kelly would pursue her master's degree first, online, so she could advance. After she finished, it would be Gray's turn. Kelly completed her MBA in 4 years and soon earned a promotion that placed her above Gray in both salary and rank. He was proud of her and pleased that their plan seemed to be working. As Kelly became more focused on her success, she lost sight of their agreement. When it came time for Gray to pursue his degree, she argued they should instead buy a house to raise a family. Gray was disappointed, but conceded it was a reasonable idea. She assured him he could go back to school later. Each time, something else took priority over Gray's MBA. Wanting to avoid appearing selfish, he always gave in. Kelly enjoyed being the primary earner and began to see herself as the more dominant partner in an otherwise equal marriage. As Kelly came downstairs that evening, her stomach fluttered. She loved her husband, but she wanted Johan, wanted to feel him, be with him, and spend the night together. She believed she couldn't do that without telling Gray first. She was convinced he loved her enough to grant her this one weekend. He had never denied her anything. "Dinner's in the microwave," Gray said flatly. "Just heat it for a minute." "Thanks. Can we talk?" she asked. Gray looked up from his book. He sensed this conversation mattered. "I want a hall pass this weekend," Kelly said carefully. Gray froze. His mind raced as nausea set in. "Pardon me?" he asked. "I need to spend the weekend with Johan Wegman. Just once. I love you, Gray. I'll come back and spend my life proving that." Gray felt sick. He knew the marriage was already over. "What if once isn't enough?" he asked. "What if you decide you need him more than me?" "That won't happen," she said quickly. "You promised me once before," he replied. "You vowed fidelity." She looked away. "I need this. I know you love me enough to give it to me." "You don't need it," Gray said calmly. "You want it, and you hope I'll allow it. I won't. But I don't own you. Do what you choose, and I'll do the same." "Thank you," she said. "No," Gray replied. "I told you to do what you must. Then I'll do what I must." The next night, Kelly sat at the kitchen table when Gray came home. He noticed a packed bag by the door and her revealing blue dress. "You seem confident," he said. "I trust my loving husband," she replied softly. "Have a good weekend," she said. "No sulking." Gray smiled sadly. "I loved you so much," he whispered, then went upstairs. Kelly didn't notice the past tense. Her thoughts were already with Johan. Kelly met Johan at the hotel, where they checked in as husband and wife. They shared dinner, wine, and quiet conversation, appearing like a devoted couple. Back home, Gray ate pizza and drank beer, then packed Kelly's belongings into bags and boxes, placing them by the door. Finally, he sat down to watch Young Frankenstein. When Kelly and Johan returned to their room, they embraced again, unaware that Gray had already made his decision. He was roughly 6 inches taller and about 40 pounds heavier than her husband. Still not fully clear-headed, Kelly realized that even at his peak, Johan's size did not exceed what she had imagined. She remembered friends joking about the difference between growers and showers, something she had never paid much attention to before. As things progressed, it became apparent that there was little difference between Johan and her husband in that regard, which left her quietly disappointed. The next morning, Saturday, they were scheduled for a full day of activities, followed by another upscale dinner and more intimacy. Kelly hoped the previous night had simply been an exception. Meanwhile, Gray spent the entire Saturday alone. He didn't even turn on the television until evening. No matter how he examined the situation, he saw no path forward that allowed him to remain married. He still loved Kelly. That feeling didn't vanish overnight, but he could not accept the level of disrespect she had shown, nor could he imagine ever trusting her again. He refused to live waiting for the next time she might request permission to be with another man. A rerun of Leave It to Beaver played on the screen, though it could have been anything for all Gray cared. He took another drink of beer and stared ahead, his thoughts drifting back to happier moments with Kelly. Honestly, he often wondered how they ended up together in the first place. As business majors in the same year at Arizona State University, They shared several classes, yet Gray never imagined the striking young woman even noticed him. She was usually surrounded by admirers. Then, early in their junior year, she sat beside him in an honors accounting class. She flirted openly, and to his surprise, asked him out for coffee afterward. He accepted without hesitation. They were nearly inseparable through the rest of college and married about 6 months after graduating. Until a few months ago, Gray believed their marriage was solid. Recent events revealed fractures, and then Kelly crossed a line he never thought she would. Kelly lay beside a sleeping Johan, thinking about how much effort it would take to regain her husband's forgiveness. The weekend was almost over. She replayed Gray's words from when she told him about the hall pass. Yet she was convinced he loved her too much to let one weekend destroy their marriage. She had never expected to think about Gray while she was with Johan. The day out had been pleasant. Johan was charming and engaging, but back in the room the second night, his attentiveness faded again. He seemed self-centered, and despite her attempts to excuse it, she couldn't ignore it. I hurt Gray for this, she thought. I'm an idiot. After a shower and brunch, Johan was cheerful as he and Mrs. Wegman checked out. Kelly smiled politely throughout. They shared a long kiss in the parking lot, which she felt was the most intense moment of the entire weekend, before driving off separately. During the hour-long drive home, Kelly rehearsed what she believed would be an ongoing argument with her husband. She was certain Gray would eventually give in, as he usually did. If needed, she planned to distract him with affection and lingerie. She smiled to herself, confident in how easily she could redirect him. Kelly pulled into the garage, checked her makeup, grabbed her bag, and walked inside with her head held high. "Hey, I'm home," she called. She waited for Gray's usual greeting, but none came. Hearing the television, she entered the family room and saw him watching a baseball game. He glanced at her briefly and nodded without speaking. Annoyed, she walked away. "What are all these bags by the door?" she shouted after opening one and recognizing her belongings. Gray appeared behind her. "Making it easier for you to move out when I serve you divorce papers," he said calmly. "There's not going to be a divorce," she protested. "It was one weekend. One. We've been married 12 years. "We didn't talk," Gray replied. "You talked. I listened. I told you I wouldn't accept it. Marriage means no hall passes." "You'd really end everything over one weekend?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "There is no future together after this," Gray said. "I warned you." Tears fell, and for the first time, Gray didn't move to comfort her. "You cheated," he said. "Telling me first doesn't change that." "You said I could choose," she argued, "and face the consequences," he replied. She declared she wasn't leaving. Gray told her to take the guest room. She hauled her bags upstairs without his help. He returned to the family room and resumed watching the game. Later, Kelly sat noisily flipping through the newspaper. "Aren't you going to ask how my weekend went?" she demanded. "Why would I?" Gray replied. "I assume it involved cheating." "We also went out and did things," she said. "Wonderful. Tell someone who cares," he answered. On Monday, Gray began separating finances and preparing for divorce. Kelly avoided Johan at work, aware they viewed the weekend very differently. She needed Gray back to shut down Johan's future advances. Life had grown complicated. Eventually, she admitted to herself that cheating woman fit better than loving wife. That evening, she apologized. Gray responded coldly. "I would have thought you loved me enough not to ask to cheat." Things worsened at work when rumors spread. Kelly learned Johan had been boasting. When asked how it was, she admitted the truth. It wasn't worth it. Johan, despite appearances, had disappointed her. Weeks later, divorce papers were served. Kelly cried, claiming Gray had allowed it. He reminded her he warned her of consequences. Even her parents' pleas didn't sway him. "I don't call that a mistake," Gray said. "I call it a choice." Gray groaned when he saw Kelly's name on his phone the day after speaking with her father. More excuses, he thought. "I'm sorry my dad called you," Kelly said. "I guess you figured out I wasn't completely honest with my parents. That's not something you volunteer if you can avoid it." "I never thought he'd call, and I never thought you'd tell him," she added quietly. "I didn't tell on you," Gray replied evenly. "I told the truth." "Yeah," she sighed. Kelly and her attorney attempted to delay the divorce, but since Gray filed under irreconcilable differences and there were no children, it was finalized within 9 months. Kelly struggled to accept that Gray wouldn't offer her a second chance after what she repeatedly referred to as a mistake. The mistake was more than just being intimate with another man. Gray told her one evening when she tried again to change his mind. You were emotionally involved long before that. You ignored my feelings. You disrespected me completely. When did you stop loving me? Kelly wiped at her eyes. In the past, Gray would have tried to comfort her. Now, he accused her of trying to cry her way back into his life. I know you still love me, she said. Why can't we try again? I do still love you, Gray answered. That's why this hurts so much. But you didn't love me the way I loved you. I would never have considered cheating. And I could never trust that you wouldn't do this again if someone else caught your attention. There won't be another man, she said quickly. There shouldn't have been a first, Gray replied. You promised me that when we took our vows. During the months the divorce was pending, Johann asked Kelly out several times, as did other coworkers. Being exposed as a cheating spouse made her the subject of office gossip, and she was soon called into human resources. We don't forbid employees from dating, the HR director explained, but we do expect discretion. When half the men are talking about you spending a weekend with Johann Wegman and half the women are guessing who's next, it becomes a problem. If this continues, you may need to relocate. I hear Maine is lovely this time of year. Despite that warning, Johann approached her again the very next day. Come on, baby. Your husband's divorcing you. We don't even need to leave town, he said. Take the hint, Kelly snapped. I destroyed my marriage for something that wasn't even worth it. Now, leave me alone. 2 weeks later, Kelly accepted a transfer to North Carolina. By the time she left, nearly everyone knew Johann wasn't the impressive figure he believed himself to be. A month after that, he transferred back to the Amsterdam office. On a quiet Saturday morning, Gray moved through a grocery store aisle, appearing distracted and distant. He was fit and attractive, but seemed lost. He didn't wear a wedding ring, but Peggy Scanlon had already figured out he was single. The contents of his cart, frozen meals, snack foods, beer, and grilling meat, suggested a man living alone, possibly divorced. Peggy, a fifth-grade teacher, considered herself average in every way. At 29, with her 30th birthday approaching, she had little hope of leaving single life behind. She'd noticed Gray several times over the past months and wondered how someone like him could still be alone. He didn't seem like a player, more like someone who had been hurt. Normally shy, Peggy surprised herself by finally speaking to him. I know this is forward, she said, but I'm Peggy Scanlon. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Gray stepped back and looked at her carefully. She wasn't striking like Kelly, but there was something genuine in her eyes. For the first time in 2 years, he considered a woman as more than just a friendly face. Yes, he said, I'd like that. Peggy was open and easy to read. She hadn't dated much and spoke honestly about her past. When she finished, she waited quietly. Gray saw that she already understood he was divorced. After a moment, he told her his entire story. When he finished, both sat in silence. I'm sorry for unloading all of that, Gray said. You're the first person I've told everything to. I've been told I have that effect, Peggy replied with a smile. Kids and dogs, too. Gray laughed, realizing how comfortable he felt with her. They continued seeing each other, and by the third date, they became intimate. After dinner one night, they returned to Gray's apartment. What followed was gentle and meaningful. For the first time since his divorce, Gray felt truly connected again. A year later, Peggy, who had been a bridesmaid many times, was finally the bride. They later had 2 children. Peggy never forgot her vows. Kelly, meanwhile, carried that lesson forward as well. Years later, after remarrying and remaining faithful for 15 years, she discovered her second husband was unfaithful. This time, she fully understood the pain she had once caused and ended the marriage quickly. Approaching 50, Kelly found herself alone. She reflected on the life she could have had, children, shared milestones, a full family, and recognized what she had given up for a brief and unfulfilling choice. She shook her head at her own entitlement and regret. Across the country, Gray and Peggy Penner sat in a high school gym, watching their daughter receive her diploma while their son looked on. Peggy squeezed Gray's arm. They exchanged smiles through happy tears. Gray kissed his wife lightly, earning an embarrassed groan from their son. They laughed together. And that brings us to the end of today's story, the narrator concluded. Did it go the way you expected, or did it surprise you? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed it, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.